Hello and welcome to my masterclass on Daddy Daycare. The title of this episode is Parenting Lexicon. So let's first start off with what lexicon means, because I didn't know what it meant before I got started in medical communications. And in medical communications, a lexicon is essentially a strategic vocabulary. It's the words or terms that you use around a drug or a disease space to ensure that your communications are consistent and aligned and eliminate the potential for confusion. And I'm repurposing that term into a parenting context because I personally think that the words that you use to navigate a situation can be really important. And while the messages or the tone or the intended output is essentially the same, regardless of what words you choose, the specific choice, your lexicon, your diction, can make a big difference in the outcomes. And it can really turn a chaotic situation into a peaceful one if you have just the right word choice. And I want to give you three examples of how I use this. The first is inserting a word where a word isn't used. And this is sort of best illustrated when my son Lennox is struggling with something. If he's frustrated with something, if he's trying to put his shoes on or put something away or get something out and he's having trouble and he's struggling, he'll just go, and he'll tug on, And I hate this. It really gets under my skin. And so what I'll do when he does this is I'll say, help. Can you say help? Help? And he goes, help, 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 help. So he gets it. And I was like, okay, cool. Like with a word, instead of a grunt, we can get somewhere productive and it isn't quite so irritating. Help, help, help can still be a little annoying, but at least it's forward progress in terms of him communicating what he needs, and it's less irritating for mom and dad. And ideally, this works at 2. It would also work at 22. So hopefully there is this familiarity and willingness to ask for help, because we all need it at one point or another. So that's example number 1. Example number 2 is adding a word to sort of cushion it or wrap it in a way that's a little more effective. And this was something that was my wife's idea for correcting his behavior. And that is to say, no, thank you. Because nobody likes to hear the word no. No sounds uncomfortable, and it's sort of, no one likes that. But if you say no thank you, no thank you, no thank you can still say no and get that point across, but it encourages sort of a politeness. It allows for you to demonstrate some sense of manners and a way to communicating with somebody that isn't quite so blunt and sort of like jarring. It allows you to sort of be a little bit more like, no thank you, I don't want you to do that, instead of just no. And so it's 2 extra syllables, but no thank you is something that we use to sort of correct him instead of just saying no. And what's hilarious is that he's turning this on us, and he'll say things like, no thank you mommy, no thank you daddy, and that's great. We want to see that. And so that's just adding a word to a phrase you're already going to say. And the last example that I want to present is changing words. So using a different set of words when you that are have a different, essentially the same meaning, but they have sort of like a different emphasis. And what I mean by that is when Lennox was about 1.5 or so, first started talking, he went through a go away phase. So he would say things like go away, go away, go away, go away. And that doesn't feel good. Unless you're sort of talking to a raccoon, like go away, you don't want to use those words. It's rude, it's impolite. Even if you need people to leave you alone, it's still not a particularly nice way of communicating yourself. And so when he would say go away, I would say space please, space please, space please, space please. It still can communicate the same thing. You can still add that layer of intensity or necessity or urgency to it, but you're saying it in a way that's a little less abrasive and offensive. And what's nice is that my wife and I can use the same term back at him. So let's say we'd like to use the bathroom in privacy, which is tough when you have a 2-year-old at home. We can say things like space please, and Lennox understands that. And he'd be like, okay, I can walk away, because my parents are literally saying go away in a nice but pleasant way that's not sort of disruptive or jarring, and it can potentially diffuse an otherwise tense situation. So help, no thank you, and space please are just 3 examples of our parenting lexicon. And I find these hacks to be useful. And I like to use my head when it comes to parenting, because if you're clever, you can really kind of like overcome a lot of obstacles.